Hey guys, Colton here with Cypher Data Solutions. Today I wanted to talk to you about Azure Purview. So Azure Purview is Microsoft's new unified data governance platform. And so what that really means is that it's just Azure Data Catalog version 2. So today we're going to dive in, take a look, and see what all it has to offer. Azure Purview is going to be a data catalog that allows you to automatically go out and harvest the metadata from your data sources. It's going to allow you to assign business meanings to those data assets, view a visual map of how they're all interrelated, and it's going to allow you to search and provide your users the ability to search those data assets. So to get started in Azure Purview, you're going to first need to go into your subscriptions and see if you have the resource provider configured yet. So the way you do that, you just get to your subscriptions, whichever one you want to use, and then you need to scroll down here to the resource providers. And so mine's already going to be set up because I've set up Azure Purview in my tenant before. But what you're going to do is you're going to scroll down, see if you have the Microsoft.purview, or you can just search in here. If you have it registered, great. If you don't, go ahead and click register, and it'll take you through it. It's super simple. But what we want to do next is we actually need to create the Azure Purview account. So again, you can just search for Purview. It's going to pop up right there. Click on it, and then you're going to want to create one. So I've already got one there, but you're going to click create, and it's going to pop up the wizard that you've seen before that just takes you through the whole thing. All right, so you'll want to choose a resource group. You can create a new one, whatever you want to do, and you've got to give your Purview account a name. So it's just got to be unique within your tenant, and it's got to only include letters, numbers, or dashes. So I'm going to call mine Cypher Data Solutions -Purview. You just go through the rest, the networking, configuration. So the capacity units isn't very clear on exactly what that is. So I'd recommend that you really just test it out, scan your data sources, and see how it's performing. So capacity units are how you're going to be billed for Azure Purview. And that's really you're gonna incur the most costs whenever you're scanning your data sources. So you can make that decision, test it out, see what happens. For now, we're gonna choose 4 capacity units. All right, and then I'll go through and validate everything for you, and then you can click create. So once your deployment is complete, you can go ahead and go to the resource. So first thing we want to do is set up security for the account. So head on over to access control. Now I'll be an owner by default because I created the resource, which you can see here in the role assignments. But we want to configure the role-based security. So go to add role assignments, and we'll first set up the owner. And I already created a Azure AD group called Data Catalog Admins. So you'll want to assign whoever you want admin role, and they pop up there, and you just go through and do the exact same thing for everybody. So here's the tricky part. So when we first set this up, the owners did not actually include access to view the assets. Even though it says that it grants it full access to manage all resources, you can't actually view assets. So what you need to do is you also need to assign data curator or data reader to whoever needs access to your assets. Okay, so now that we've gotten access set up, we can go in and actually view the Purview account. So go back to the overview, and then you can open up the Purview Studio. So you can also get there by just typing in your browser web.purview.azure.com, and it'll take you right there, allows you to sign in and select which subscription you want to take a look at. All right, so right out of the box, we don't have any assets, we don't have any data sources defined. So what we want to do is we want to go to sources and we want to set up a data source. So the way data sources work in Purview is that you can set up collections, and then within collections, you register individual data sources. So collections are just empty containers for you to categorize your data sources. So I'm going to create two different collections, one for my Power BI and then one for my SQL resources. So the collection names can't have a space in them. So you got to make sure that you only have letters, numbers, and dashes and underscores. Then I'll create another collection for SQL. All right, notice you can also nest collections. All right, so let's register a database. So if you go into database here, you're gonna see the option for SQL Server. This is the on-premise SQL Server. So we don't actually want this because what we're gonna connect to is an actual Azure SQL database. So notice it does differentiate between the SQL database, the managed instances, and on-prem. So this is gonna be just the AdventureWorks 2019 database. I'm going to allow it for all subscriptions, the server name, Cipher Data Solutions. All right. So we set that up. So in order to actually scan the data source, you're going to have to go in and click this this button here. Not really sure what that icon is supposed to be, but it's to set up a new scan. So we'll give it a name. And then since we're just pulling from our own Azure subscription, it gives us the nice drop down. So the credential. So there's two different ways that you can connect to this. You can connect with SQL login or the managed identity. If you're going to use the Purview managed identity, what you're going to need to do is expand this and copy this identity name. This identity was already created for you whenever you set up the Purview account. But you need to grant it access to be able to connect to your SQL database. So you open up Azure Data Studio and you want to make sure that the correct database is selected. And then we're going to create user, and it's got to be the exact name of the identity from external provider. All right. And then we can run that. All right, and then we also need to execute SP add role member. All right, I'm just gonna go ahead and give it DB owner to our account. All right, so now we can head back over there. All right, so now whenever you test the connection, it should succeed. All right. So we can continue. Oh, that's interesting. What happened here? Well, so you can see there's some odd things going on here. I've never seen that before. But what it is, so these are the schema and table names that are inside of the AdventureWorks database. So they're like overlapped. It looks like they're duplicated actually. But you can actually select only certain ones that you want to scan. For now, we're going to scan everything. All right. And then for now, we're just going to use the default SQL Data Warehouse rule set. But you can create your own. We'll talk about that later. And then you set up the trigger for it. So what is the schedule? How often do you want to run this? So if you set up the schedule now, you're not going to be able to run the scan immediately. You won't be able to kick it off until the scheduled time. So what I like to do is change it to once, go ahead and set up the scan, and then after it finishes the first scan, you can go in and edit it to add it to the recurring schedule. All right, and then you save and run. And then it's just gonna go in the background and start scanning that data source for all your assets, metadata. So now we're ready to register our Power BI tenant. So again, we click on register here, go over to Power BI and click Power BI. Now Purview doesn't support Power BI report server, so the on-premise report server where you can host your own Power BI files. It doesn't support that at this time, but we do actually have some products coming out that'll help you with that and sync it with Azure Purview. What we want to do for the Power BI tenant, we name the source, right? And then we just register it. So it's the only tenant that's associated with your Purview account. So it's very simple to set up. Now we need to set up the scan. Really the only thing to do in here is to identify whether you want individual workspaces and how you're gonna authenticate. So if you're gonna use the managed identity, you need to set up access to this identity name. So you might want to copy it, and it has to be set up through a security group. So you're going to want to go into your Azure Active Directory, create a group, which I've already done. The group that I created is called Power BI API Access. So you'll want to open that up and then add the managed identity to the group. All right, and then now you can go over to Power BI portal. So you will need to be an admin in your Power BI tenant, so make sure you have that. If you don't, get with somebody that can set that up for you. So you're gonna wanna go into the admin portal and then go to the tenant settings, and almost all the way down at the bottom, there will be an API admin settings. And so by default, that'll be disabled. You want to enable it and then add your Azure AD group to the list and click apply. All right, so now we can come back to our Purview account, test the connection. All right, and so now it takes about 15 minutes, it says, to sync up those permissions. So you might want to give it a little while, go grab a cup of coffee, come back and try again. All right, and then so we're back here to setting up the schedule. Again, I recommend just adding it once and then going back and editing it for the recurring scan. So now that our scans have finished, we can go in and check out what's happened. So you click on Browse Assets, and you're gonna see that there's several items up here. So if we wanna look at the Power BI first, you can go in, click on each individual workspace, and then click on the report. You saw that there was report and data sets in there. So what it's going to do is it's going to give you information about the report. So the name of the report, the location, and then this is a really cool thing. It's going to show you the lineage. So you're going to see that the Power BI report customer dashboard uses the data set called customer dashboard, which connects to the AdventureWorks 2019 database. So now you can see a full end-to-end view of how your data connects to one another, upstream and downstream effects. And then you can also look at the related section, and that's just going to show you everything that's related to that report. So let's go back in and look at some of the database stuff. So if you look at the Azure SQL database, so I have two different databases in here. One of them, you'll notice, is a Cipher Data Solutions server where we actually set up the scan. That is one of our data sources. This other one is on a different server that I have, but that's where the Power BI report is getting its data from. So it registered it in two different places because it is two different databases. All right, let's look at the sales LT schema. Let's just go into the customer table. And so what we should see is that there should be several classifications on this table. So you can see that we have an email address, a person's name, phone number, or an EU phone number and a US phone number, which is great. And then look at the schema, you can see exactly which fields those are. So as we bubble those up, you're gonna see higher and higher levels of where your sensitive data is. All right, there's no lineage for that. And then the related just shows the database and server. All right, so now that we've got our assets created, let's create some business glossary terms so that way we can associate them with the tables and columns. All right, so go over to glossary. And so we're gonna create a new term. And so we're gonna go with the customer because that's just an easy example to use. So we'll use the default template. I'll do a video later on customizing those templates. But so what we're gonna do is we're gonna call this customer, and we're gonna say customers. The definition, our customers are the people who buy our products. Customers are always right. All right, and so this is our first term, so we're not gonna have a hierarchy, so there's nothing for the parents. But what we can do is we can assign acronyms for it. So another word for customer is client, or some people might call it account. And if we go into related, so same thing, since there aren't any other terms, there's not going to be anything to select, but you can actually associate different terms together. But the contacts, we want to assign an expert for this. So who is the subject matter expert? I happen to be the subject matter expert on customers. So I'm going to add myself. You can also add stewards who are just responsible for the quality of the data. And so before we create this term, this will probably sneak past you the first round. You're going to want to go up here to the upper right hand corner and change it from a draft to approved, and then click create. All right, so now we can go into our assets, and I'm going to search for customer, and it's going to give me exactly what I'm looking for, the customer table. All right, and I'm going to edit it, and I'm going to associate the customer table with the new customer term that we just defined in the glossary. All right, so glossary terms right there, customer. Click save. Now you'll notice here it says that making a manual update to the asset will prevent future scans on this asset from updating it. So what that means is that if you even assign it a glossary term, and then let's say the schema changes, you add a column, or you remove a column, or change the data type, that schema is not going to get updated. This is something that I hope Microsoft fixes very soon, because it makes this almost useless as it is. So go ahead and click save to assign that glossary term. We'll see how Microsoft responds to the need to classify and assign owners and terms, glossary terms to your data while still checking for schema changes. All right, guys, that's it for today's overview of Microsoft's Azure Purview. As you can see, this tool's got a lot of potential. There's a lot of things that we didn't even get to cover, such as the insights and analytics that it provides for you, and integration runtimes, connecting to on-premise data, all that. So please be sure to come back to the channel so we can discuss that in more depth later. And I've also got a Azure template for y'all. It's a script that'll pretty much create all of these best practice user groups, create your Purview account, and associate all of the necessary security for you. So be sure to check the link in the description down below so you can get that and get up and running in Purview yourself quickly. All right, thanks again. We'll see y'all next week.